Welcome to the Call to Lead, where founders and CEOs in the finance sector share what calls them to be a leader and offer wisdom for ambitious professionals. I'm Tracy, CEO of Windsor Edge, where we grow financial services and fintech businesses. Let's get into today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Casperson, author, journalist, founder, and CEO of FinTech Femme.
What do we see often in business is we see, and this isn't always talked about, right? Like I didn't go to business school, so I had to learn this behind the scenes.
Feminism and fintech, and those two things putting next to each other.
Fintech being a very business-oriented, for-profit, capitalist industry, and then what feminism embodies and stands for. At the end of the day, I do toe that line. Women are not the side thing. They're not the women's stage. They're not the women's event. Women are the main event. They're the main panel. They're the main strategists. Those blueprints I reveal every week, every podcast, every stage, every moment. It's just like business gold that anyone, regardless of how you identify, should want to get to know.
What you're building is phenomenal, and it's huge, and it's got so many moving parts. I've been following you and also looking for other women in the space, but more than that, I was just looking for people who are doing interesting things in fintech and in finance. With all of these different components, where did you start? And is there a vision that you're working towards that you kind of had to do these things to get there in order to like build the right way?
My background is in journalism. I remember when I was in school and a lot of my professors in my journalism school were, they're always asking me, oh, do you want to be on TV? Do you want to do broadcasts? What do you want to do with this? Because I think they really saw the passion. For me, it was always about, taking the stories that I heard, the people I interviewed, the thoughts I had in my head and using them and writing it down and using it as a tool to actually really create the stories that I wish I was seeing in the world, and ones that really reflected me, that then connect with so many other people. And so when it came to creating my own media company, I had to start there. And that would be my biggest piece of advice, is to just start with what you're great at, start at what makes you feel the most confident. And that was my writing. So that's why the newsletter just made the most sense. So I went from like writing news stories for publications to writing a newsletter twice a week. The other part of that is just the practice, right? Like if you want to get good at something, the biggest difference between people that succeed and don't is consistency. Like talent doesn't actually get you success all the time, or even passion, right? But a consistent, discipline does. And I've never wavered from my Tuesday and Thursday send, as much as it has pained me at times. But that level of consistency is what helped me get the ball rolling in building FinTech Femme. Because once the newsletter and my writing created traction and it grew to 50,000 subscribers in less than a year, I knew I had a very engaged audience. My open rate is 50% on average, which is massive in the newsletter industry. And then from there, when you get to understand your audience so well, then I knew what to build next too, because I have a direct line of communication with them.
And what inspired the Academy of FinTech?
Yeah, so once again, this is like the evolution, right? So from the newsletter, I also started a podcast, and what the podcast actually did was fuel a lot of the content I was also able to write in the newsletter. So the podcast, I'm interviewing, powerful, influential, interesting women building fintech companies and tech companies and leading banks or leading fintech companies. I found a lot of common threads in their story, whether it was, their ability to do more with less, or the way that they made big calls on big bets and had, such little fear when it came to taking risks. Things that I wish I was taught a lot more in my career. And what you can do as you're building a business is say, okay, well, let me kind of test the waters with the community, i.e. the audience that you've attracted. And so for me, after years, right, I really waited before putting like a premium product out there, like my events, like the Academy of FinTech. which I launched in December of 2024, and we have over, I think, 100 members now at this point, which is awesome, just in a few months. But the Academy is, for me, a way of creating a new system and pattern for fintech, for business. So what do we see often in business is we see, and this isn't always talked about, right? Like, I didn't go to business school, so I had to learn this behind the scenes. When you have a tight-knit group of people that you create daily momentum with, which means like you're talking to regularly, you see them at events, you engage with them. Maybe you're, making that extra effort to make sure you like their posts on social or engage with their own content or their company, making sure you're amplifying them, making sure you're attending their events. Showing up for people has actually been the key to a lot of my success. Even if I'm a little tired, I'm a little drained, I just came back from that travel, I will make the effort to like get dressed, put on my best outfit and my lipstick and go out and show up for people. And that multiplies, that reciprocates. I wanted to create that same momentum for the women in my FinTech Femme audience. And from there, what I'm able to do is that smaller cohort of, the 100 of the 50,000 audience, I'm able to really focus on nurturing them. I know that's also how we create new patterns where women are the ones funding each other's businesses, giving each other deal flow, providing job opportunities to each other. This is how I've found success. I wanted to replicate it for the women that wanted to have real skin in the game. Like you, Tracy.
Well, it's exciting to be a part of something as it grows and to know that you had just launched it and already brought together so many great people. There's something about messaging and about how you're embracing people and how there's no difference between when you're talking about fintech and then when you're talking about women leaders in fintech. It's not like two separate things. I'm wondering how you came to the decision to not include anything femme in the title, the
Yeah.
Academy of FinTech.
Yes. So the model there was I wanted to replicate originally the Oscars, the Academy of Motion Pictures and Fine Arts. I wanted to create that same level of prestige for the women in fintech community. What's really amazing about FinTech Femme and what I've built is that I rarely have to say, or shout out like, this is for women. I just create organically and what I would want to see in the world. And so the women that are like-minded, like me, that are ambitious and high level and running their own companies and doing their thing, they're naturally attracted to what I do. So for me, the Academy of FinTech was my way of saying, I don't want women to be some sidebar conversation. Women are not the side thing. They're not the, women's section. They're not the women's stage. They're not the women's event. Women are the main event. They're the main panel. They're the main strategists. They're the most qualified for the job. If anything, all of you should be waiting in line, buying a ticket to listen to the women I have in my community, speaking on my stage, written about in my book, listened to on my podcast, written about in my newsletter. Like, those strategies that the women have, those blueprints I reveal every week, every podcast, every stage, every moment, it's just like business gold that anyone, regardless of how you identify, should want to get to know. So for me, the Academy of FinTech is my way of saying, like, women, this isn't some women's thing. This is a business community that stands on business and is the most excellent and qualified for the job. And that's why it's the Academy of FinTech.
I'm obsessed. This makes complete sense to me. I really loved that, and I've been wanting to ask you that question, and it just makes it makes complete sense to me. I was wondering how everything's going with your book. When it comes to something really concrete, I can imagine there being a kind of reveal of who's supporting you there and who's not. Who, like, books can be very touchy, especially.
Ooh, very, very good to bring that up, Tracy, because it is so true. Writing something or building something as intense as a book does, and then when it actually comes out into the world, you're right, it does very quickly reveal to me who really is in my corner, who really wants to put their skin in the game to support me and my work. There's a million women who have stepped up. You know, there are women that I featured in the book who went above and beyond to make sure that it got the amplification that it deserves. You know, there are women who I asked to join me at my book launch, you know, like Amy Naokis, who of Anthemis, who when I asked her like a week before my book launch party if she would join me on stage, she was like, clear schedule. When a woman who writes a book about you and asks you to celebrate it, you show up. And that's exactly what she said. She's actually on the podcast. You could check it out. But yeah, and her story is amazing in the book. But so, you know, you're going to run into people that don't want to support you. And then you're also going to run into women like Amy and the countless others that have, you know, bulk order, invited me to their company, right? Like had me do a book signing, whether they're in it or not. And that was actually really cool to see. And that momentum continues today. So that made the book pretty well worth it.
I had another question that I was very interested in asking. Feminism and fintech, and those two things
Yes.
putting next to each other. Now, some people who call themselves feminists might be upset with that. Has that come out to you?
Interestingly, no, that's never happened. I could see, I guess, why, because it's very, very hard to grasp like an alignment of, you know, fintech being a very, you know, business oriented, for profit, capitalist industry, and then what feminism embodies and stands for. So I guess my response to that though would be, at the end of the day, I do toe that line, and I think for me, it's about finding the balance and the change and enabling the change in the systems that we're dealing with. I would say the reason I was so, you know, I wanted to tie these two pieces together was because they resonate with me, right? For me, my feminism fuels why I love fintech so much. And because I want access, because I want financial freedom for everyone, because I want every right woman on the planet to never feel like she has to be in a bad position or make a bad decision because she's financially insecure. There's truly nothing more powerful than being able to make capital markets move, being able to enable a group of people to have wealth that they've never had before. I've felt it, I've experienced it, I've seen it happen in real time. When you see that impact of an industry like fintech, it's like so hard to not, for me to not lean into, oh, well, fintech is all about access. And the reason I lean on where, you know, on things like femme and feminism is because they are more gender agnostic terms. And anyone can be a feminist, right? Anyone can identify that way. And so that for me was the reasoning behind using FinTech Feminists for the book. I have incredible men that have shown up for this and love it and want me to speak at their stuff and want me to be a part of their stuff. And so I think the whole point is to be inclusive.
Everything about that was spot on. Social justice has gotten this like its trendiness of like anarchism, as if you care about creating a finance system that's better for all, then like you've sold out of the justice system somehow, you know, about social
Yeah.
justice. And it's
Right.
there's so many ways to participate in society to make an impact.
I think it's like the Wicked conundrum, right? I'm obsessed, obviously, with the Wicked movie. And that's how I would think of it sometimes is like, look, okay, are you Elphaba or are you Glinda? There can be moments in your life where you're like, I'm definitely Elphaba and definitely identify more with Elphaba. But then sometimes you're like, well, but Elphaba dies, you know? Like, so is that the best way? And then, you know, is Glinda really the good witch, right? Is she actually, there's all of these, but I think that's the point, right? The point is for the audience to interpret what is good, is someone born wicked, all of that fun theater ness to it. But my personal take on that, and for me, is be in the middle. Like, that's where I live. I'm definitely more like Elphaba leaning, but I understand that, you know, I can't totally fly off the handle. And I think that's why fintech sits so well in that intersection, is because, and this is my first wicked fintech metaphor, but I haven't done this one. Um,
I'm glad you
but
did
I
it
would
here first.
yes, yeah, did it here first. But but fintech is that, it's the newness of innovation and technology tied to the old financial institution. And the narrative when fintech was first coming out because of 2008 and the crisis of, haha, these fintech startups, these tech startups are going to take business away from the banks, isn't what's actually happening, right? The reality is that you need the old structure of a bank and its legacy just as much as you need the innovation of the new fintech and tech startups. You need them to work in tandem, and that's my wicked analogy. Yeah, because if they work in tandem, then they're unlimited. You're welcome, Tracy. This is
I
gold.
am I am honored, and we can't go up from here. So this is a beautiful place to
No
close
one's gonna bring us
today.
down.
No, you can't, not from here. I'm so grateful. When I first was starting a podcast, I thought, how do those people do it for 3 hours? But now I can see how I can sit with you for 3 hours and keep this conversation going. But today we're gonna just move on with our two Brooklyn lives.